All right. So, been focused a lot on technology and AI as some of the things that I'm interested in and that I communicate on the channel, and also what that has to do with consciousness and the nature of reality. And I spend a lot of my time researching and taking notes, looking things up, and it's kind of nice to be able to just put it all into a sort of format here where you can see the notes at the same time as you can see the video, as you at the same time as you can see the accompanying images and content, and where you can hear me and you can also hear the video that's playing and see the video that's playing. And that's exactly what I want to do is I want to talk about GPUs. I want to talk about the technological advancements that they are and that they're bringing, and showcase just a little bit more data and just play on that for a little bit together. So something that we're probably familiar with is that the content of the past decades, it didn't necessarily require so much graphical processing, right? There were less pixels, the frames per second were less. So nowadays, everything is being pushed to 4K resolution, and 4K resolution, at least, it looks fantastic. It looks fantastic. Everything looks crisper and clearer, right? It looks closer to how you view reality, how you view your tables and your trees and your basic existence. And it's also closer in frames per second. So the frames per second look closer and closer to 60 frames per second, something that looks closer to your natural vision, your natural sight, and beyond. Technology is even pushing 120 frames per second and past that too. Whereas if you come from something that only looks closer to like 10 frames per second or 30 frames per second, that kind of stuff starts to be less and less appealing to your eyes and your experience. So that's exactly what a graphics processing unit has been able to achieve, is it's been able to compute parallelly, whereas your normal computer is doing larger or stronger, let's say stronger computations, but sequentially. Your GPU is doing thousands of parallel computations at once. So that's why you see here in this image, you have, here's your modern 5090. This is what's upcoming in the series. So if you scroll down a little bit here, I write, you have each of these series that have come out every around 2 or so years, and each one is trying to prove new benchmarks of capabilities. So right now we're at a 5090 series that's going to be out this year, 2025, and this is like the highest end GPU technology. And as you can see, look at that floor, you can see these reflections that look like it just, rained, or that those plants were just watered inside. And if you look at sort of the past right there shows you what it was before that. This one's even more crisp and clean. I just want to show this one, and then I'll get back to a little more context. Right, so this is the old, and watch the new. Right, do you see that? Look at the difference. Look at that. Like, your normal vision doesn't see that. Your normal vision sees something closer to this. And I think that that's hugely insightful. That is not what you see usually, and this is closer to what you see usually. So this is a good example of where that additional graphics processing data is actually giving you something that looks crisper and clearer, right? So now let me give it a little more context. So I'll just leave that up so you can see that comparison right there of blurriness versus crispness, So the other things that are important to remember are this is not just being used in video games, although that's an insanely cool piece of data, that the video game market is now larger than the movie, music, and TV markets combined. That's freaking crazy, That's massive. Like that's a huge market. The video game market is larger than the movie, music, and TV markets combined. When I was looking at this, I was like, this is crazy. Let me get this over to you. There we go. Okay. We're talking, 200 billion globally. And this is huge because a lot of it has to do with technical innovations, expanding market demographics. See, look at this. Larger than all of film, TV, and music combined. And then I also wrote 3 billion active gamers, right? Why did I write that? Well, it's an important thought to think that why is almost approaching half of the world's population identifying as gamers, right? So it's like you identify as a man or a woman, like those are two huge identification clusters on planet Earth. But somehow, and human, identifying as human, right? But somehow 8 billion or whatever, but somehow gamers has become like, I don't know if it's true, if it's the 4th largest identification cluster on the planet, but that's pretty cool too. And I have metaphysical reasons that I've talked about in the previous videos on the channel why I think that that's the case, because I think that GPU technology itself is leading us to a form of conscious recursion. Reality, when you feel, right, your sensations and your that tactical feeling, I think that can boil down to digital and information. And so therefore, when you extrapolate the pace of technological innovation, I think what happens is consciousness recurses on itself. The procedure of consciousness exploring data or information calls on itself, kind of like a tree in its cycles of leaves, and seasons. In an infinity of data and information processing and choices and exploration of play and freedom. So another thing that you may not know, because when you click over here and you look, you're like, oh my gosh, like, look at this. Like, you're looking at this and you're like, oh, well, this is only for television or video games. This is only for entertainment. But it's not. This is what's super interesting. So you look at this and you're like, oh my gosh, holy cow. Like, look at that on the right. Look at how blurry that looks, and watch this. Look at how crisp that looks. You know, something that's in the comments below that if you look at that for a second, that's nuts. In the comments below, there's a bunch of content that I also agree with. You know, that this is commenting on how insane what we just saw is, and there's comments asking for gameplay, which I think are great comments. But there are comments like this, you know, floors are mirrors now. Yes, because wet and shiny equals realism. And I generally agree with that too. Not every surface should be this reflective. That's a really good comment. Because here's the thing. If you look at this image, it's basically like all of the marble is brand new and it's been polished, hyper polished. And if you think about it, have you ever actually seen, like, does new marble that is hyper polished, does it even reflect like that? You know, it's a good question to ask. Because is this actually too shiny? Is this actually too much like a mirror? Does it become too unreal because it goes over what we actually see? Because if you look in your room or in your space right now, if you look for like a photo. Like I have a photo on a bookshelf that I can look at, and that photo is reflecting some light right now, but it doesn't look like a mirror. You know, it looks a little bit more like there's something that's kind of blurring it a little bit more too. So I'll leave this up for you to look at while I talk about the other sectors here, because, you know, I went and I started to look at, okay, well, you know, why are there so many other sectors that GPUs are targeting? Like these thousands of smaller cores doing this parallelism, this parallel compute and pushing out information. One of the first things that you think is, okay, yeah, like, you know, video graphics, like that makes sense, like for movies and for games and for stuff like that. But it's like, oh crap. We're talking like all the AI stuff is with parallel processing, a tremendous amount of it. And let's just go through this list so you kind of grok. In scientific research, we have simulations modeling physical phenomena. So you have things like climate modeling, astrophysics, quantum mechanics. You have big categories, genome sequencing, and drug discovery. You know, financial services, you have high frequency trading, risk analysis. In AVs and autonomous vehicles, this one makes sense, I think, to common, you know, people, because when you see a car, that car has, if it's an autonomous car, that autonomous car has to be taking a tremendous amount of sensor data and analyzing it and generating a graphical representation of the world, and then making decisions and choices within that, and then that, you know, instant feedback looping nearly to update its visual and its choices. So that one makes sense, like why GPUs are like really crucial there. Healthcare and medical imaging, so MRI, CT scan analysis, AI and diagnostics, protein folding. So this is a crucial one, right? Video editing, rendering and encoding high-resolution videos, special effects, generating realistic CGI and simulations, and live streaming. And then robotics. So this is all technology that GPUs are using that are increasingly becoming immersed into nearly every single part of our society. Real-time navigation. You know, these are robots navigating dynamic environments, manipulation tasks, and simulations. So robotics is another huge field. I mean, in a decade or two, it will be more and more obvious. why GPUs are used in robotics, why it's so important. Cloud computing, GPU as a service, rendering farms. So AWS, cloud GPUs, blockchain and crypto. So cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, Web3 infrastructure, engineering and design, CAD, simulations of structural, thermal, fluid dynamics, VR and AR, GPUs rendering these immersive 3D worlds with minimal latency, aka conscious reality. Haha. Cryptography, cybersecurity, and energy. So I just wanted to give you that additional context, because you think, oh, this is just for like movies and games, but no. You know, this is for a lot of stuff. A lot. So if you keep watching this, you'll see there's a couple more good ones here to see. This one's a good one too, right? This looks like a mirror. I think it's a good comment. This looks like a mirror. I don't exactly see a realistic floor. You know, this is even beyond it being brand new and hyper polished. This just looks like a mirror. Not even a still pool, like swimming pool, gives these kinds of reflections. So this is another good example. It's like, you know, if you imagine yourself like watching a movie or like playing a game and you see that. Let me bump up the fidelity here if it's low. Okay, it looks like it's been very low. My apologies. Yeah, that's better. But now if I'm trying to give you 4K, let me bump it down to HD. That should be enough. You've gotten the gist of it though. Like you can see in this one and in this one, you can see even when you go down in resolution, I think that might be even an interesting point. Like you go down in resolution, like let's just jump this down to 360 for a second. Yeah, like even in 360, you can still see, like look at this side. Look at that compared to that, right? And then now if you ramp it up, like ramp it up to 1080. Now check that out. This is HD now. Look at that. And look at this. And now one more in 4K jump. Yeah. So this one's the most obvious. Look at that. And look at this. Holy cow. All right. So let's go to that next one. Like this looks very ridiculous. And it was good commentary too. Putting a player, like in gameplay, putting a player into this environment changes even a 5090, even the most cutting edge futuristic, you know, upcoming GPU technology. Putting a player in here holding a controller, walking around in the environment changes the GPU's ability to render the reality that the player is dynamically influencing with their controller inputs. So it might have even been better for NVIDIA to have at least one of these, let's say, have a player immersed in them, walking around in them, showcasing the 5090's power in that scenario. So there it is again. Like it doesn't even necessarily look like there's a floor, you know? Okay, so this one's interesting too, because, you know, you look at it, you're like, would you want to watch a movie or play a game that shows the one on the left or the one on the right? Like sometimes I don't know if we're necessarily experiencing reality at that level of polish and reflection and detail. Like you would need to be walking by a lamp in a reality that is this level of polished, you know? I don't know if you ever walk by a lamp with that level of polish. And so then that kind of takes away from the realism and the immersion to an extent. You know, you walk by dirty, unpolished lamps like a lot of the time. And that's sort of what they look like, you know? So there's almost like a more natural feel. Like if you put it on a scale from like dirty and like opaque to clean and completely reflective, it's probably somewhere closer to the middle. You know, these are your two extremes. You know, and the reality is probably somewhere closer to the middle. Interesting. And again, it's like putting a player into this environment and walking the player through the environment taxes the 5090 in a different way. You know, it taxes it to respond to the player's inputs live. Whereas this is like, it's a showcase, you know? That's why it's labeled as such, right? It's a showcase. That's why it says that. You know? A showcase that's captured on the 5090, right? It's not saying that it's live gameplay captured on the 5090. Live gameplay probably won't look like this for a little bit longer. But we're getting there, which is why we're heading towards some sort of conscious recursion. Because gameplay is about to be at this level of realism and immersion. And when gameplay is at this level of realism and immersion, the likelihood that you want to enter and simulate complex explorations of information and data and choice is going to be too captivating. It's going to be overwhelmingly captivating. And that's, you know, the recursive nature of a tree and its cycles and seasons, very similar to consciousness and its layers and its cyclicity, you know, its cyclicality, right? It has cyclicity to it. You know, when you wake up in the morning, it's no different than when you woke up yesterday in the morning, and no different than when you woke up the day before that in the morning. And you go to bed and you do the same routine, right? You floss and you brush your teeth. You know what I mean? It's a cycle, right? Your coffee in the morning. It's like, it's a cycle. You know, it's not linear. It's a cycle. You know, you're sitting here now, and now is cycling. You know, every scene, every story, every word, right, has a pause on one side and a pause on the other. Word. Now. So it's become more and more obvious that this technology gets to such a degree of immersion that consciousness enters it. Why are there 3+ billion active gamers worldwide? Why is that such a high form of identification? Right? Something about gamers being able to enter an infinity of worlds, right? That is so captivating. You see? It's just like this. You know, being able to enter an infinity of indistinguishable worlds and data spaces, info spaces, is the same thing as what this is already. This is already entering into an infinity of worlds and data spaces and info spaces. That's why the sort of holodeck style recursion makes sense. So if you look at GPUs, if you look at them from the angle of conscious recursion and indistinguishable simulated virtual worlds, you understand what this is already. And you sort of understand where things are heading. Okay, this is another example where it's probably somewhere closer to the middle. Like in a movie or a game, you're probably looking at that, and it's probably not, your eyes are probably not going to be capturing it at that level of fidelity. You know, this is a showcase, but you're probably not going to be capturing it at that level of reflective fidelity. It's probably closer to the middle. It's not that bad where you're just going to see like white blurs and stuff. Like that's pretty, like kind of underplaying it a little, because you won't see it at that poor of a level. But this is almost, you know, this is really showcasing it, but it's, in a way, it's over realizing it because we don't necessarily see it that way. All right, so this is another good example. So, and you have to watch out, you know, where they flip flop where it's kind of their old versus their new, like RTX on and off. Like here, on was in the first part and off was in the second part. So if you go back a little, okay. So when it's on, if you look right here, and now when it's off, watch how it blurs. You see that blur? And you see that blur, right? You see these blurs? You see that reflection of the leaves and the trees, right? And then how it's gone when you don't have the new tech. But I wonder, when I'm looking, am I seeing something closer to this? Because it's interesting how they're both in the new tech and RTX on. Because when you look, it's almost like, do you see more through the window like this, or do you really see more of that? So we're basically collectively providing feedback to GPU technology innovations, you know? Like, I kind of think that I see through, but it's probably a little more in the middle, like where I see some of the reflection, but not none, but not only reflection. Like, it's almost hard to see anything inside of the car here. And then if you look at this one too, so that's it on right now, which is so white. Like, it looks so white. Like, it doesn't even look like it's reflecting the sky in a way. Oh, what's it going on over here? That off. It's basically with it off, you're like looking directly through it with no reflection. Yeah, so again, it's probably somewhere closer to the middle for what's more like natural. Right, so look at this. Right, with it on, and now look at it with it off. Yeah, with it off, that looks a lot more blurry. I don't know if I actually normally see like this, though. That's really the fundamental question when you're looking at advancements in GPU technology and photorealism with videos and with games. Because I don't know if I see that level of detail normally, or if I see something that's closer to this. Like the water having a little bit of, you know, mud or like inability to perfectly reflect, I think is a natural thing. So maybe even here where there's that little bit of, blur. Whereas when you look at the new, it almost looks like you're missing, in a way, some of the dirt being reflected. All right, so there's that one. Then this is another. So now it's off. And see, right away you saw more light reflected there. More here. And then those back windows are really... Up here didn't change, though. But the back windows changed a lot. See, up here didn't change at all. Down here changes. I'm interested to hear what your taste is. What is your taste? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because there's a lot of discourse in the culture right now on this specific subject. What is your preference? Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer something closer to in between? Like, that looks too reflective. That looks too reflective. Like, that looks like white. Looks like white with a tree. And white with tree. I don't think I ever see that level. When I'm seeing reflections in windows. But here there's almost no reflection. So it's probably somewhere closer to the middle. So in here it's on again, right? I think this one's a good example because it probably, your normal glass, it probably, if it's clean, it looks just like this, I would say. And like the old one, it just looks like there's just some blurry reflection that doesn't reflect the environment that you're in whatsoever. So this is actually a good one. This, I think, communicates the message really well. Because this is your classic glass, clean glass, and it looks like you're actually in the room, in the space. And then that's like, we're just missing the technology to be able to render that reflection. So that's a good example. Right. And again, here it's off, but it kind of looks fairly good and fairly real. And then when you turn it on, it probably looks more real. Yeah. Okay. It's basically the difference between clean glass and unclean glass, is another way to say it. Like, if this just wasn't cleaned up glass, it would look more like this one. And then there's your more clean glass. But I think this is a good example still. This one is a good example. Okay? Right, and here it's on. That level of reflective clarity, That's the end of the video? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, pretty cool stuff. What's up with GPUs? What's up with technology advancing like this? Where is it all heading? These are great questions to ask. All of the different sectors that it's involved in. And why it's happening. Might you sitting watching this video right now be digital information, conscious digital information? And therefore, cycles or recursion be this technological advancement that then allows you to enter in more explorative simulations. These are great questions to bring up, bring more peace and joy and awareness to yourself now, self-knowledge. All right. If you want to check out some of the comments below, they're on, this is a funny one. Can we get a round of applause for the cleaning crew? That was a good one. I don't necessarily think that visuals have peaked. I think they have more room to go, especially given there's so many contexts. But optimization is really important for experiences to run well. I was saying I played Witcher 3 and I loved Witcher 3, but Witcher 3 at least on the PS4 Pro, Witcher 3 froze and closed on me. It just force closed on me maybe like 20 or 30 times. So it's those little optimizations that I think are really important, or like Cyberpunk 2077 with its launch versus many years later after it got optimized. Same thing with No Man's Sky. So, and those are great stories in gaming history and gaming lore. Great examples. But if we come out with the intention of optimization, if we come out with the intention of engines being able to focus more primarily on running well, I think that that's great instead of prioritizing strictly visuals. So it's a balancing act there in the development of the technology. Gameplay, so critical. We need to throw a player in there. That will bring a lot of insight into what a 5090 is actually capable of. And yeah, all this stuff about like gamers wanting floors to look like mirrors. I think that's a really good point. That's not actually what is wanted. Nor is it actually increasing realism. Shiny equals realism. Like, it's just, those are really rich points here. I think it's a good reflection. Like, how much more of a wow would have there been from the culture if there was at least one of these where the player was actually in the environment controlling it, and the 5090 was actively rendering that environment through feedback on the player's inputs. All right. So probably be doing more content like this too, where I'm showcasing notes, videos, commentary, all on subjects that are happening. There's a lot that's obviously happening in the culture, and your taste is basically what you focus your attention and consciousness on. So that's how consciousness works. It works like picking something, running a certain program, running a certain intention, tasting a certain flavor of music or video or news or food, right? And it creates that experience for itself. But 99.99% of other information, data, experiences are not chosen in that process. So, really the nature of consciousness is really the nature of what it's choosing. It's choice, right? So are you choosing what news, what information, what data, what content what food, right? What experiences are you creating or simulating for consciousness, for yourself? Because it's all based on that. You click open any news feed and you have an infinite amount of subjects. And so whatever you're choosing is what you're consciously, actively simulating. So it's your intention manifest. It's your program that you're choosing to run in that moment. So I'll showcase more of what I'm choosing to investigate and showcase that, as part of this, as part of the channel, and as part of what I feel brings a lot of cohesive resonance to the culture at large too. Because it's like, okay, perhaps if I see things more as a single consciousness, and I see it one consciousness and more digital or informatic, I can feel more whole and peaceful and unified and integrated, and I can emanate that more into the culture. Not that that's specifically a better thing or worse thing, it just is, what it is. And so that's what's choosing to come out of this. And if you're clicking into it, then you're also choosing to be interested in that. All right. And there'll probably be variations of content too. I just set up a new 57-inch ultra wide monitor. It's like two 32-inch 4K screens next to each other. So I'll be using that to edit more precise videos in larger timelines in Premiere. So I should be able to communicate these things more artistically, sophisticatedly, more captivatingly. So I'm really looking forward to that, to really captivating your attention with interesting subjects about society, like, for example, money, and like the nature of money, and what happens when society becomes more regenerative, and the nature of like deception and corruption and things like that, but packaged together in such a fascinating way. And I look forward to being able to, use this new technology that I've been setting up in the space to be able to communicate that way. So it'll be stuff like this moving forward, but it'll also be, those super edited pieces of content that hopefully, make some sort of cool, catalyst effects in your mind and your ways of seeing that then, that's how we like feel grateful, for each other. Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy, everyone. Enjoy. All right. Love you. Bye.